Hi, welcome to the Mass BioEd Career Ambassador Spotlight. I'm Carla Talanian. I'm the Director of Talent and Workforce Development for Mass BioEd. And with me today is Mr. Paul Fabre, who's the Director of Client Services for BioBridges. Thank you, Paul. It's nice to see you.
Thank you so much, Carla. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. BioBridges is a clinical staffing organization that matches clinical research professionals with companies that are in need of their expertise on a temporary basis. So I'd like you to explain for our audience what kind of things these clinical research professionals might be needed for.
Absolutely. So all of our clients the goal that they have is to move their clinical programs into some forward progression. What they're looking to do in some cases maybe to file a new drug application to start a clinical trial. They may be looking to progress a clinical trial from phase 1 to phase 2, which essentially means they're going to be increasing the size of the study and the patients that they're going after, or the amount of patients that they're targeting. And so that can run the gamut from anywhere from somebody who needs help them run the clinical operations and managing the trial day to day, to people that are medical physicians that design the trial, to folks that write the actual trial documents. Literally the instructions for how the trial should be done is written by a medical writer. Then there's also liaising with the health agency, which is, as some of you may know, the FDA, which is who gives them the go-ahead and regulates the trials and makes sure the patients are safe and that the trials are run with integrity and everything. So we have people that fit all of those production and strategic roles to be able to move a clinical trial forward.
Excellent. Why don't we just take a quick step back and have you set the stage? So explain for the audience what the FDA has to do with this, what exactly a clinical trial is, the different phases of clinical trials.
Sure. So, and I always make sure that I know this and my clients know this, but I know, not being a clinical trial expert by any sort, but more understanding the personnel and the people that are involved in it, I can give you my sort of overview or understanding of it from that perspective. The FDA is essentially an authority, a board, a regulatory body that allows for a trial to be conducted, and also provides guidance on how to make sure that that's done safely, and also provides barriers to make sure that a trial isn't being conducted that puts people at risk, that products are out in the market, and it could even be, makeup products that we use in our day-to-day lives, lotions that we use that may be causing harm. So their job is really to manage and mitigate those risks by working with the companies that are conducting these trials. And the clinical trial essentially is a product or a molecule or a asset of sorts has been developed either in a lab or developed by a scientist, depending on the number of areas where you can develop these types of products or these types of assets in order to target a certain therapeutic indication, a disease, something that's a physical, or in some cases, just an issue for a human being who's sick, essentially. And so what they're doing is testing that drug or that biologic or that vaccine in a patient to see if it's two things, if it's safe and if it also is effective. And so when a phase 1 trial goes on, usually the goal is for the company to establish a concept that this could work and that it is safe. And then as a trial grows, it goes into phase 2 and 3, where it's larger, and what's called endpoints, which are essentially, if you think about a science experiment, you set up a hypothesis and you design an experiment to test that hypothesis. These clinical trials are essentially programs that are testing a hypothesis. That hypothesis is this drug may help a patient who has breast cancer, for example. And they're going to conduct a trial in a certain way to see if the hypothesis is correct. And they target that hypothesis by putting together endpoints. And so they're trying the drug to see if a product reaches what's called endpoints, or reaches the data that shows this hypothesis is correct and to what degree. And so to answer your question, the FDA regulates how that's conducted, and our clients are operating essentially large scale, very complex science experiments to treat and heal patients that are sick.
Great. And so it's easy to imagine that there are a lot of different kinds of professionals involved in running clinical trials. So
Absolutely.
maybe this is a good way for you to explain your role in it. What do you do at BioBridges, and how do you help professionals find the trials that need them?
Yeah, that's a great question, Carla. So I work more on the client side. As you heard from my title, my job is directing the client services. And really what that means is I'm in client relations, account management, business development, working to, well, I guess the word is working to set up, to start, facilitate, and then maintain relationships with my clients. And now the best way that I can, and it's funny because the person that helped me realize this analogy is best was my theater director back in high school. He and I still keep in touch, and he's like, "Oh, so that's your job." So the way that he described it was that, BioBridges is essentially a really high-level casting agency that goes out, and my job is to work with the production studios, the Universal, the Pixar, to understand what movie they're producing, what the characters are that they need in order to produce that movie, and what the timing is on that movie being shot. They'll let me know what kind of people that they need. They'll let me know what kind of funding that they have for it. They'll let me know how they're planning on running it. And then my job is to work with a team of casting agents, which is in our world, career managers, who have groups of actors that they've worked with. In this case, these are consulting professionals in biotechnology, but let's just call them actors for the ease of this example. And the actor may, or the role that the production company may come to me with could be, we need male one who is an athletic, tall, former college athlete that can play the role of someone looking for a new job, and they just fell in love with someone, and they're trying to manage falling in love and having the new job and trying to figure out their lives. It's a movie plot of sorts. My job is to go out and work with my team to understand who would be the best type of actors or consultants to fill that role. Once I am able to understand that, I present those actors to my clients, and then it's on them to essentially audition them, to talk to them about in this case, the work that they're doing in clinical trials, or about the movie. And if there's a good fit and a good audition, our professionals would then step in and play their role. The reason why a casting agency is the best example of it is because it's a finite point, usually, of work. Now, there are some recurring roles. Of course, there are some movies and TV shows that go on all the time. And our professionals will step into those roles with clients on a regular basis, but they come in and they come out, they jump in and they jump out based upon what the need is for that particular role or that particular episode or that particular movie. And my overarching goal is to make sure that there's a strong fit between the actors that we put in place and the production company that I represent by way of BioBridges. So, a bit oversimplified, but that's really one of the best ways to describe sort of what type of personnel we're working with and what our goal is with our client relationships.
Yeah, no, that is really fascinating. I love the movie production analogy. Sticking with that for a little while, I would imagine for a movie or a TV show, there's many different kinds of actors that are needed. You've got the leading man, the leading woman, and
Sure.
You've got a bunch of extras, and in addition to that, you're going to need the stunt people, and you're going to need the hairdressers and the set designers and things like that. So can you give the audience a sense of some of the different professional roles that are involved in these clinical trials?
Absolutely. One of the most common roles is really somebody who works essentially like a stage manager. A stage manager's job is to coordinate all the different pieces to make sure, and let's just use a theater example, but to make sure that everything that's happening on stage is in place. And so that would be the equivalent of a clinical operations professional who is in charge of working with the clinical site that is running the trial, who is in charge of working with the internal team at the sponsor, in this case being, for the example, we're using the production company or the biotechnology company, to work with maybe the medical director who's written and designed the trial, to work with the data manager whose job it is to oversee and review the data that's coming out from the trial. The clinical operations person will make sure that the protocol that was written by the medical director is being executed correctly. The data manager will make sure that the data is coming back and is reviewed and clean so that it can go into the database and be input correctly into the different fields. The medical writer, in this case, may be the person that's writing up the actual instructions for the clinical trial. And so to get away from that example, but these of a theater or a production, these people all play different roles that kind of work together for the overall production of the movie, in this case, or the trial. But the typical roles that you'll see are somebody who can operate the trial and manage the information that's coming in, someone who can write up the actual trial, someone who can then take the information that they're gathered to the regulatory boards, the FDA in this case, and present them what's been done, how it's being done, and make sure that it's falling in line. Because ultimately, once the movie is completed, the FDA has to approve it to then be put into the theaters, so to speak. And so all the people in the typical type of professions are of those types, where they're managing the data, they're overseeing the operations, they're writing up the trial, and they're liaising with the regulatory board to make sure that everything is happening within the safety and integrity and the rules set out by that board.